My name is Tom Andrews. I am the United Nations Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in Myanmar, and I've been asked to make some comments about the election that is about to take place in Myanmar on the 10th of November of this year, 1 week after the elections in the United States, and specifically to touch on the voter rights enfranchisement or disenfranchisement of the people in Myanmar. And I'd like to make a few points regarding voting rights there. Number one, the government, in a comment that was made before the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva a few weeks ago by the permanent representative from Myanmar to Geneva, that the government regards these elections, the standard for these elections, to be elections that will be free, fair, transparent, credible, and reflect the will of the people of Myanmar. That is the standard that they are holding out, or at least that they identified to the Human Rights Council as the standard by which these elections will be measured. Clearly, we already know that these elections will fail to meet that standard. And the first reason is because one's right to vote in Myanmar is based upon, at least in part, one's race, one's ethnicity, and one's religion. And by definition, any election that bases eligibility to vote on those criteria is not free, is not fair, and certainly will not reflect the will of the people of that country. The Rohingya ethnic minority community, over 500,000 now living in Rakhine State, over 1 million, living over the border in Bangladesh, in Cox's Bazar, after being forced out. They literally running for their lives from brutal attacks by the military of Myanmar. Over 100,000 refugees, Rohingya refugees in Malaysia. And virtually none of those will be able to vote in these elections because they are Rohingya. So this is a fundamental problem and a fundamental denial of the right to vote in Myanmar. A second issue relates to the violence that is taking place, unfortunately, in various areas of Myanmar, none more so than in Rakhine State, where a brutal conflict is taking place between the Tatmadaw, the military of Myanmar, and the Arakan army. And in this case, I asked for the government to consider establishing alternative voting procedures and measures, ways to accommodate those who are living in areas that are volatile, that are violence prone, to provide them with opportunities to vote. And they didn't. It's clear that, or at least it's not clear to me, that any of these alternative measures were considered. And so we have people living, significant numbers of people living in volatile areas that will be denied the right to vote because just a few days ago, the government announced, the Union Election Commission announced, that voting had been canceled in these areas. We're talking about 9 of the 17 townships in Rakhine State and townships and villages in other parts of Myanmar. Now, the fundamental problem with this, obviously, is that people will be denied the right to vote. But when that is denied in areas that are volatile and in the midst of violence, it can become not only unfair but dangerous. The ballot must always be preferable to a bullet. And it is going to be, many experts, many observers are now talking about the fact that this is going to just add to the tension, add to the danger, add to the violence, the fact that all of these people will be disenfranchised. And because the process of deciding where to cancel elections and where to hold elections was not transparent, there are political parties that are calling foul, predictably, claiming that the decisions to shut down elections have been made not for security reasons as much as for political reasons. And there's various evidence that has been laid out to make that claim. So these are two major areas of deficit areas with respect to these elections, where people are going to be denied the right to vote for circumstances certainly beyond their control. Another area that might be of interest is the whole question of the right to make informed choices, giving voters the information that they need to do so. And in Myanmar, that is a significant problem. In fact, it's a problem in many areas of the world because of COVID-19. And the fact that because of increasing rates, alarming rates in Myanmar, people are restricted severely from being able to go out into their villages, communities. Candidates can't conduct traditional activities, campaign activities. So they're restricted to how they can reach voters through media. And unfortunately, in the case of Myanmar, in order for a candidate or a political party to have access to state media, their messages have to be approved by the government, even messages that are critical of that government. And so, as it turns out, candidates, political parties have been complaining. I've heard reports from them that their messages are being censored or their ability to deliver messages on state media is being denied because the government will not approve their messages. So this is, again, an area, a great area of weakness with respect to the elections in Myanmar. And again, the process of making these decisions, I've been informed, is not transparent, and there are no opportunities for political parties or candidates to appeal these decisions. A final way in which candidates can provide voters with information, that voters can receive information about these candidates, is through an app that's been developed through the Union Election Commission called mVoter 2020, an app that was developed with the assistance of international organizations. And the problem, again, here with this app is that voters or candidates are required to identify their ethnicity and their religion, and in the case of the few Rohingya candidates that have been able to make their way onto ballots, this voter app will not identify them as Rohingya. They're identified as Bengali, which is a pejorative term that is rejected by all Rohingya. And the Independent International Fact-Finding Mission, in a report to the United Nations last year, said that this is a term that is used as a tool, as they put it, a tool of systematic oppression and persecution of the Rohingya. But nonetheless, that is the term that is being used to identify Rohingya candidates in this app. So this is, again, a very big problem, and one in which the ability to have a fair election in which voters are provided with the information that they need to make decisions, again, is being denied. Let me make one final point, and that is that the lifeblood of a democracy is freedom of expression, freedom of association, a free media. And in the case of Myanmar, that lifeblood is severely compromised by laws that are on the books and that are being enforced that deny those fundamental freedoms, those fundamental rights. And just recently, I've been receiving reports of ongoing arrests of young people, students in Myanmar, who are protesting government actions. They're protesting the war and the conflict in Rakhine State and other measures. And they are being arrested. They are facing trial, some significant prison sentences. And they are being added to the list of others who are serving prison time now, and their only crime is demonstrating publicly, peacefully, and expressing opposition to or criticism of the military, the Tatmadaw, or the government and government policies. So in all of these ways, the election in Myanmar is compromised, and the ability of voters to make informed choices will be significantly reduced.